Welcome back. This is the last video, finally, of the Pokemon. I promise we're moving on to more exciting projects as we go. We're going to begin by altering the styling of this, the Pokédex component. We'll worry about centering it and changing the size and all of that. But what I want is to make this red when it's a loser and make it green when it's a winner. So not only are we changing the text inside loser and winner, but also we are changing the class. We could do the exact same thing we've done a lot of times where we do a conditional. So we do class name equals, then curly braces, then this dot props dot is winner. But we have some duplication here, first of all. And then second of all, this is really ugly to look at. So I'll just finish typing it. This dot props dot is winner. And then we'll do two different classes. So we'll have Pokédex winner. We could also just do winner on its own, but Pokédex winner. Otherwise, it's going to be Pokédex loser. Now, I'm not a fan of this as I've already explained, this is kind of long and there is some duplication here, the same idea. So what I'm going to do is actually a conditional statement up top inside of my render where I'm going to make a variable called title. And then down here, instead of all of this, I'm going to display the title. So I'm going to basically just do title right like that. And this will at least clean my code up a little bit in the render or in the return. So I'm going to add a conditional if this dot props dot is winner. You can also do this in line, but you have to surround everything with those curly braces if you're going to do it inside of your HTML elements or JSX. Okay, so if that's the case, we'll set title to be equal to, what do we want it to be? Let's do an H1, and our H1, close it there, is going to display winning hand. Let's do that. And then we want to give it a class name, which right now we don't have these classes defined, but this one will be Pokédex-winner. Then we'll have our else. So that means you lost. So title is going to be another H1, which I'll just duplicate this, but we'll change the class name to be Pokédex loser, and we'll say losing hand. Now we have those two, and we're displaying title down here, so we should at least see an H1 that says winning hand and losing hand. Next, let's go and create these classes. So inside of our Pokédex CSS, we'll do Pokédex winner, and I believe the color I found this for CA. You could really just do green, F50. So that should give us some green for the winning hand, and then the red for the loser, so Pokédex-loser needs to have a color of, what are you? You are E91E63, and save. Okay, so now we have winning and losing displaying, the text is changing, and the color is changing. Next, let's work on some of the other styling to make things a little nicer. First of all, an easy win is just to text align everything to the center, so Pokédex, we'll just do text align center, and save, and now we're getting this all centered. Already it's a lot better. I should point out that there are other options to do this. Rather than doing a class selectively, you could just change the color. So inside of the component, you could pass in the styles directly. So a style object that contains, color set to green, color set to red, and you pass that in, but you can also do it through class names. It's up to you. Okay, so that's that. Next, I'm gonna get rid of the default props in our Pokédex. And we'll see, everything still works. These are coming through from Pokegame, not Pokédex. They're being passed in. Next, we can get rid of this H1. We don't need to say Pokédex at the top. And I'm gonna start by displaying that title H1 at the very top. And then after that, inside of my Pokédex div, instead of doing total experience as a paragraph, I changed it to be an H4. So we're getting total experience down below. And then we have our div with Pokédex cards, and that's it for the Pokédex component. And you could be done here. Totally, this looks fine. But I did show an example that had slightly different images where there was a gray background on the image that matched this background. And then it sort of looks like a little card or like a Polaroid or something. So I'll show that now. Okay, so in the PokeCard.js file, to get the image to look the way that I had it in the original intro video, I added a div actually around it. So we'll give that div a background color. So this div will have a class name. I think let's do Pokemon or Pokecard-image like that, IMG. or let's do image fully spelled out. It's not that long. And then inside of that div, we'll actually put the image. So we won't notice much of a difference, but we're going to then select this Pokecard image over inside of our Pokecard CSS. So many CSS files to keep track of. Okay, so I'm going to select it down here, Pokecard-image. And what I did was I used Flexbox again. So display flex. I'm going to center the content, justify content center, and then align item center. So that's going to help us get vertical and horizontal alignment inside of that div. And then we give it a height. So that div that the image is in has a height, not necessarily the image itself. So height is 250 pixels, and I'm going to give it a background color. And I think I used the exact same color that was the background of the body, so ECEFF1. And then I also gave it a border radius just to round it out to match what we had before on the actual card itself. And finally, a little bit of a margin. Okay, 1 rem. Let's take a peek. Here we go. All right, so you can see now that we have this background. So this is the div, the Pokecard image div with the image inside of it centered, and it has a gray background. Now I also had this little hover effect. It's nothing revolutionary, but what I did was basically as you hover over the image, I had it grow, had it scale. So if we select all images inside of a Pokecard, the actual image, Pokecard image, there we go. This allows us to select those images, and we're going to do something on hover. So when you hover on an image inside of a Pokecard, we're going to transform it, which is a CSS property, and we're going to use scale. I think I did 1.25 or 1.5. And let's see how that looks. All right, so it's happening very quickly, so we'll add a transition in just a bit. I think I also changed the opacity a little bit. So 0.7 maybe, 0.8. Grayed out just a tad. Okay, so now we're going to slow this process down, and I'm just going to select Pokecard images one more time. So I don't want to just do image. For example, I don't want every image that you hover over to do this. In our case, it would be fine, but if I had other components with other images, that would not be ideal. So we do want to scope things still to what we're working on. So we don't have to give every single thing a class, but just make sure that when we are writing our styles, we're keeping that in mind. Okay, so I'm just going to do a transition, which is going to slow things down, assuming I give it a slow value. I'm just going to say all properties ease 500 milliseconds. I could also explicitly say only transform and opacity 500 milliseconds, but it's shorter, it's okay. And now I get this little effect. It's not really great, but it's good enough. One minor thing, I think in my original version, I did change the font. I imported a font from Google Fonts called Work Sans, and I'm just going to change font family to be Work Sans. And let's just make sure that that's working. Okay, so now we have a new font. Lastly, we have this Pokecard title. I can style that just a tiny bit. So inside of anywhere in here, really. Let's do it up top though. Pokecard-title. We'll set a margin bottom, a font weight, and a font size. Just shrink it down a bit. All right, so that is the basics of this project. Simple, I know it's not very intriguing or exciting, but we kind of went through the steps of starting with a small component, a single Pokecard, and then adding in a parent, so a Pokédex, and then refactoring it further so that there's now a Pokegame component in charge of the Pokédex, in charge of Pokecards. All right, so that's that. Moving along to now talk about React State, a really important piece of React.